We've been to Fallout 3's Capital Wasteland, Fallout New Vegas' Mojave Wasteland, and just recently Fallout 4's Commonwealth. But where will our next journey take us? This isn't just a question about Fallout 5, but the possibility of a spin-off game coming beforehand. Nonetheless, today we'll be looking at 10 of the best locations for future Fallout titles. And consider smacking that like button if you do enjoy the video, and also drop down the comments to let me know where you think the next Fallout game should take place. We'll start here at the number 10 spot with Mexico. We only know of a brief history behind the country, but we know of some interesting events that have occurred in the Fallout universe, such that in 2042 a major earthquake hit the city, destroying large amounts. Use of the Mr. Handy robots in the reconstruction made them one of the most popular robots in the 21st century. In 2051, Mexico was invaded by the United States. The reasoning behind all of this was that the United States was trying to protect business interests and their oil supply. And following this American takeover, PetroChico, a branch of the Poseidon Oil, began operating in the barren Mexico oil fields. And obviously on October 23, 2077, the Great War occurred. The city was hit with large amounts of nuclear weapons, turning it into a radioactive ruin. Many citizens were forced to flee to surrounding settlements and farmlands. Not long after the war, scavengers and raiders started to infest the city, and criminal activities became bigger than what they were before the war. And between the Great War and 2281, there isn't much known about Mexico's history, except that Baja has been taken control by NCR forces, but they did not have enough control to annex it into the Republic. And that in 2281, under orders from President Kimball, new California Republic Rangers were deployed to the area for what Chief Halen describes as chasing ghosts. But shortly after, they'd be sent back to the Mojave as some NCR troopers say, "I heard the Ranger vets are coming in from Baja. I've never seen one before, but I hear they chew nails and spit napalm." And one of the interesting characters that have come from Mexico is Raul Tejada, who is a very troubled past, and he's a ghoul within New Vegas. And we also have a weapon within Fallout New Vegas that has the Mexican flag on it, and that is called the Paciencia. Nonetheless, this may be a long shot, just being that Mexico is a foreign country, and if they did bring Mexico into the fold, you would expect that there would be some United States, such as Texas, being a part of it. But it definitely is fun to imagine the cartel-like gangs that could be running the country, and how uncivilized the setting has become. And at the 9th spot, we have New York City. We don't know much about New York City within the Fallout universe, but that it was the headquarters of the United Nations before it was disbanded on July 26, 2052. And that in 2065, a nuclear reactor struggled to power the population of 17 million people. And that it went super critical for about 5 minutes. While there was no explosion, the New York City incident coined the term hot summer for a heat-related electrical overload on the nuclear systems. We also know of one interesting character, and that is Dean Domino, the King of Swing from Fallout New Vegas, that performed in New York City before the Great War. And we also know that during the war, the city was impacted by the nuclear strikes. Now, as I said before, we really don't know much about New York City and the factions that are running it, or what exactly has happened to it if it's totally obliterated. And this may also be another long shot, just being how closely Boston and New York City are alike. And New York is a huge city. It would be very interesting seeing how a team of developers would be able to tackle that project, unless in some way they brought New York's suburban and rural life together. Now to the number 8 spot, we have San Francisco. Before the war, San Francisco was known as a weird city, and in Fallout 2 it was described as being hit hard by nukes, but it didn't kill the city. Instead, it just mutated into something a bit weirder. You'll have to make your way past an oddly revived Chinatown, post-nuke punks, and a bizarre group of cultists called Hubologists. Maybe San Francisco hasn't changed it all that much. And again, that's the description from Fallout 2, which was a major location within the game. And some of the factions that we know are the Shi, descendants of a group of stranded Chinese submariners that beached nearby, and the Hubologists, a cult focused on the pre-war teachings of Dick Hubel, also calling the city home. And if you didn't know, within Fallout 4's Nuka World DLC, Dick Hubel's direct descendant Dara Hubel is leading a group of Hubologists into the Commonwealth, and that is a very interesting nod to Fallout 2. But next we have the Tanker Vagrants, a diversive collective of solitary wanderers, social outcasts, and survivalists from across the wasteland that immigrated to San Francisco for the tolerance and respect for secrecy. And it's also interesting to note that the Brotherhood is still actually have a large outpost in San Francisco, and it's said during the events of Fallout 2, which takes place in 2241, that the Brotherhood maintain a very low profile. We're not sure if this is intentional or setting up for something huge in the future. And some of the other things that you may want to know about San Francisco is this is where the PMV Valdez is stationed. It's a decaying oil tanker that played a very pivotal role within Fallout 2. It enabled the Chosen One to travel to the Enclave oil rig and save the world from destruction by killing President Richardson of the Enclave and destroying the whole facility. Nonetheless, you would imagine if we ever did revisit San Francisco, it would be about 40 to 50 years later, and who knows who could be in control of that city now and what exactly could be happening, but it definitely spurs a lot of endless possibilities that would be fun to entertain again. And at the 7th spot, we have Florida. And what we know thus far about Florida is very little. The information that we have is from Fallout Tactics 2 and has not been confirmed to be canon. But what we know is that a Gek had been irradiated, and thus the Garden of Eden it created was full of mutant plants and fungi, pretty much the mutant garden garden would end up spreading rapidly, taking over animals and using them as carriers or fertilizer to spread its fungal seeds. And it accelerated regrowth and nature reclaiming the wasteland. The fact it was irradiated meant it also began to wipe out humans. The Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel also gained a foothold within Florida. Mutant crocodiles were some of the forms of regional wildlife within Florida. So definitely we know a little bit of pieces that the Brotherhood definitely has a place within Florida. It seems like the Brotherhood's everywhere within the Fallout universe. And then obviously the mutant crocodiles, which definitely sounds like a very fun thing to see. But I think Florida is a very mysterious area within the Fallout franchise that would be fun to see, like the certain areas like Miami or even Tampa Bay. I think that'd be very cool to see what Bethesda or even a third-party company could put together and the different types of creatures that we could see. I mean, I'm not sure if we're going to see a lot of Mirelurks, but I think entering a completely unknown territory, figuring out what exactly happened and how the post-apocalyptic world impacted it would be very cool. And at the number 6 spot, we have China. And as everybody already knows, China was the primary rival to the United States, which resulted in the Sino-American War, which obviously ended in 2077 with the Great War and the dropping of the nukes. And in almost every Fallout game, you can find Chinese remnants. And in Fallout 4, we actually meet Captain Zhao, who served during the Great War, who is now a ghoul. And ironically enough, in the cancelled Fallout Extreme game, which was supposed to be made in 2000, part of the game was supposed to take place in China. Fallout Extreme's setting was never revealed, but it was said to be sometime after the Great War and that a new emperor of China was crowned, and that the new dynasty did not like how America ended up after the Great War and were building a massive missile to destroy the dangerous Brotherhood of Steel. Now, I definitely think this would be a really cool concept to do now here in 2016 with the graphical power and how games are now. I think that'd be very fun to see what they could do, and within the story that they had for Fallout Extreme, there was a bunch of other factions that played a role, but going to China and seeing how that country ended up, I think that would be the coolest thing. It would also be the most bizarre, but the idea of experiencing a Great War 2.0 would be very interesting, and the most logical foreign country to play in would definitely be China. At the number 5 spot, we have Ronto. As you can gather, this is said to be the Fallout version of Toronto. Information that we know thus far is some comments made by Ishmael Asher and the Slave Brand. In a speech to the slaves of the Pit in the Fallout 3 DLC, The Pit, Asher proclaims that the Pit, with its industry, security, and strength, is the envy of the Commonwealth, the Capital Wasteland, and Ronto respectively. And the context in which the region is mentioned implies that by 2277, Ronto had established a reputation as a significant military power over the years. And within Fallout history, we know that Canada is technically part of the United States as it was annexed before the Great War. And I get a sense of intrigue just imagining what Toronto may look like in the Fallout universe. We don't really know anything about that area, what exactly happened, if it even got impacted by nuclear missiles, but this would allow us to explore all kinds of new characters, factions, and I think it's a very unique setting that Fallout could go in the future. And to the number 4 spot, we have Texas. This is another location that we know very little about. John Cassidy, a Fallout 2 character, wondered if Texas even existed after the Great War. In the cancelled Fallout Brotherhood of Steel 2, which we're not sure if is canon, the setting of the game was supposed to be including Texas. And some of the locations that came from this was Los, a ghoul city, the Alamo, which only one bomb fell in this town, blasting the northern part of the town into a crater. The Alamo itself by chance was completely untouched. Austin, which is a city inhabited by super mutants and led by the intellectual super mutant Keats. Lone Star, which is the trading center of Texas for local factions. Fort Worth, which is the largest Brotherhood of Steel outpost in the Texas wasteland. And there's some other locations such as the Vault 39, the Corpse, and Lubbock. And some of the factions that would have been featured in the game are the Jackals, Twisted Hares, and obviously the Brotherhood of Steel. And it seems that Bethesda and even Obsidian have drawn inspiration from a lot of the cancelled Fallout games, so I would not be surprised that one of these days Texas is picked up and a lot of these locations end up really happening. I think Texas is definitely deserving of a game. With all kinds of rich history behind the state, it would be a lot of fun to explore. And now down to our top 3. Here at the 3 spot, we have Chicago. It's said to be nearly completely destroyed after the Great War, and that the few that survived the bombs now live mostly in small tribal villages near the former city. And this information is based on Fallout tactics, so not everything necessarily is canon. But sometime after the defeat of the Master in 2162, the Brotherhood of Steel constructed airships and dispatched some of its soldiers east to track down and access the extent of the remaining super mutant threat. However, we know that a storm broke the main airship and flung it far from its course, in which it landed in the outskirts of Chicago. And this is how the formation of the Midwestern Brotherhood of Steel came to be. And it said their ideals are very different from the main Brotherhood of Steel, as they are accepting of non-humans into their ranks. And after the Enclave's oil rig was destroyed by the Chosen One in 2242, the Enclave forces that fled the oil rig landed in Chicago and set up outposts somewhere within the remains of the city. Nothing is more known about the Enclave's presence within Chicago, which is definitely interesting as that really is the only pieces left of the faction. Now, I'd imagine that Chicago could be a very good place for Fallout 5, and if that is so, I would imagine that maybe the Brotherhood of Steel, the Midwestern chapter, could have problems with some of the other chapters chapters because of the ideology, if that is canon at least. And for what we know, we could be getting a civil war out of that, and there's always the possibility of the Enclave finally rising back to power, as it's been about 50 years since, and who knows if they've been secretly recruiting and gaining power. Either way, Chicago definitely is a very fun place, and it would be interesting to seeing the chaos that would ensue with this. And at the number 2 spot, we have the Boneyard. Also known as Los Angeles, this was featured as one of the locations within Fallout 1. And as some of you may remember, I've already discussed the possibility of Fallout the Boneyard being a spin-off game, and that's why I'm going to kind of sum up some of the points, but if you want to see that video, I highly recommend it. There should be a link in the description and an annotation on the screen, a lot of in-depth information that you're not going to want to miss, but some of the key points are that the Boneyard was named for its devastated skyscrapers reduced to their metal skeleton, and for the skeletons of the dead that littered the city after the Great War. And the Vault Dweller notes that the city of Los Angeles must have been the largest in the world before the war. The LA Boneyard stretched forever, the skeletons of buildings lying under the hot sun, not even the wind entered this dead city. By 2189, the Boneyard became one of the states of the new California Republic. During this time, it also began to be referred as the Angel's Boneyard, and it is one of the largest cities on the NCR's territories. It was a natural choice for many organizations to place their headquarters. Thus, by 2281, the Boneyard is host to the Republic's Reserve and the Followers Boneyard Medical University, among many others. As the NCR now has control over the Boneyard, it has become much more stable, with multiple but nowhere near all buildings rebuilt, redecorated, and renovated. And some comments from Fallout New Vegas and NCR soldier Raz suggest it is not the best place to grow up, indicating that the NCR still has much work to do, likely revolving around super mutants, ghouls, raiding gangs, and large amounts of radiation. Even a few years ago, Obsidian's CEO mentioned that Fallout LA would be more than likely the direction that they would take if they got their second chance. And personally, if it isn't them, I would love to see what another team can do. Even if Bethesda finally went to the West Coast, I think it'd be very fun to see what this new Boneyard looks like. Now, to the number 1 spot, we have New Orleans. And this goes back to some of my thoughts on Florida. We really don't know much about New Orleans in the Fallout universe, except that there probably would be some mutated crocodiles, and I'm definitely sure there would be a lot of Mirelurks. But we don't know of any influence of factions in the area. You would assume that the Brotherhood of Steel are probably there since they're all over the United States, but we really don't know who's ruling that land at the time, which may be a good thing. We don't know anything about this area, there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's honestly endless possibilities that Bethesda or a third-party company could go with, and who's to say that nukes even hit this land? But you also have to remember where all this speculation even began with the idea of a Fallout New Orleans. It was when the game designer and director of Fallout New Vegas, Josh Sawyer, posted on Instagram saying now is the time, with the image being field notes of Louisiana, and he obviously works for Obsidian Entertainment, which got a lot of people thinking, hey, maybe a new Fallout. He quickly struck that down, saying it was a different game, but that's when the doors got opened, and a lot of people started thinking, hey, why not New Orleans? We even had that fake trademark that just came out a few weeks ago, so it definitely is something that a lot of Fallout fans want to see, and it would make a lot of sense. But I think we all can agree that the next Fallout game more than likely will be a spin-off. The question is, will it be coming from Bethesda Game Studios, or will it be coming from a third-party company like Obsidian Entertainment? And the next question that comes from that is, where will our next journey take us? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to smack that like button if you did enjoy the video or found any informative value. Also, drop down in the comments. Tell me where you think the next Fallout game should take place. And also consider subscribing for a lot more additional Fallout content to come, and I'll see you later.